Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Melanin Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Valarie Winn, and I want to talk about several things in this week's episode. I hope you all had an amazing week because I had one. Last week was kind of heavy for me with everything that's going on around us, but we are still here and we are still rising, and for that, I am grateful. So let's get into this week's episode. The question that was asked to me was, how do you identify? Do you identify as Black, or do you identify as African American, or do you identify as both? And that question was posed to me because we're dealing with how to survive being Black in America. How to survive being Black in America. And I will say this, and we're going to get into all this. I will say each one, teach one. And I'll tell you where I got that from. But let's get into this week's episode. So a couple of weeks ago, Smokey Robinson was on the talk show, The View. And Smokey said that he resented being labeled or being called African American. Now that didn't sit well with me for a number of reasons, but I can't get into all of them tonight, but we'll touch on, what he meant by it. So the first thought that I had when I heard him say that he resent being called African American is because of certain things that has happened in the past, and that basically it minimized the contributions of Black Americans in America. But let's keep this in context. What Smokey was on the show for was to promote a animated film of his poem, Black American. And if you haven't heard that poem, go look it up on YouTube. Smokey is filled with knowledge and wisdom, but it bothered me when he said that he resented being called African American. But anyway, the poem itself has been animated by a teacher. The teacher name is Joe Young. And when Sonny Hostin asked Smokey about it, that was the first thing that he said. He said he resented being called African American. He preferred to be called a Black American. And so what I've learned since that moment is that there are many elder Black Americans who prefer to be called Black Americans instead of African Americans. But what sat with me about Smokey, what sat with me for a long period of time was his conviction. Like he almost hated being called African. And that's where my problem came in at. So the name of his poem, if I didn't mention it before, is called Black American. And it's a phenomenal poem. And in that poem, it is crystal clear that Smokey is an educated man. He's done his research. And me researching the poem and listening to several versions of the poem led me to think that the only problem Smokey could have is being identified as African. So that's the real issue to me. And my question for you is, have you accepted, if you are of the melanated persuasion, have you accepted? And what I mean by melanated persuasion, your skin pigmentation contains melanin. My question is, have you accepted that you descended from the great continent of Africa? If you're Black in any capacity, down to that one drop, you are of African descent. You may not have been born in Africa or even stepped foot on the continent. Because understand, Africa is a continent with many countries. We get it twisted sometimes. So, like I said, if you're black in any capacity down to the one drop, you are of African descent. You may not have been born in Africa. You may not have stepped foot on Africa, but Africa is in you. And the problem here lies in, do you know who you are? Do you know who you are? Meaning your identity. You see, on the day you were born, your identity was chosen for you, but do you know who you are? Now, I'm not going to get too deep into that, but like I said before, you may not have been born in Africa. You may not have never stepped foot in Africa, on the continent of Africa, but Africa is in you, and you are a descendant of African people. Our ancestors say so, and our history as a people say so. You see, you have to go beyond the history that is taught in public education to know who you are. When you start studying the history of black people, African people, you will understand that we started civilization. And just because a lie has been told for over 400 years doesn't make it the truth. Let me say that again. Just because a lie has been told for over 400 years, it doesn't make it true. And many of us have bought into the system of white supremacy, and we're willing to do the job of suppressing and oppressing ourselves. We have to know who we are. That's why I started this podcast. Have you ever heard the phrase, each one teach one? Each one teach one. Each one teach one is an African proverb that originated here in the United States during the time of slavery, when Africans were denied education. Now, some of you will say, well, the Indians were here. Yes, the indigenous people were here. America was not discovered by Christopher Columbus. That is a lie. But anyway, I digress. Each one teach one. It was started in slavery. And what it meant was, when someone learned how to read or write, it became their responsibility to teach someone else, and so on and so forth. And understand something, we're still practicing that today, even in corporate America. If somebody gets ahead, we try to reach back and pull somebody else in that look like us. Now, not just look like us, they have the qualifications. There's a lot I can get into, but I try to keep my podcast to under 25 minutes. And at some point, I'm going to start offering a longer podcast where you guys can subscribe to purchasing that, on Patreon and even here on YouTube. But for time's sake, each one teach one. It is an African proverb that originated here in the United States of America during slavery, when Africans were denied education. And somebody sent me a video. See, I knew I was going to get off track. Somebody sent me a video this week of some kids in DeSoto ISD. off the chain. They had a substitute teacher in there, and you guys are aware there is a teacher shortage across America. I used to teach. I taught high school for 16 years. Anyway, that's not, each one teach one. Okay, so we do that to better our community. When I rise, I reach back and I pull somebody else up. That's for the betterment of our community. Okay, so each one teach one. Like I said before, they're gonna have some Black Americans listening to this podcast, African Americans, who will say, you know, I'm not a descendant of slavery. I'm from the indigenous peoples. Okay. And that may be true. But it is important for you to understand who you are. And it does not negate the fact that you are a descendant of Africa. The melanated pigmentation is evident of that. However, to provide more evidence, we as African people need to understand that there was not a place on this earth that an African foot didn't touch first. You got to do your research. But I'm here to help you with that. Okay? So, I identify as a Black African American because we do know there are white African Americans too. Now, in this country, the United States of America. Okay? And that's how I identify. You know, Smokey said he resented being called African American because he felt like it negated or it downplayed, it minimized all the achievements of Black Americans in this country. Now, I disagree with that sentiment, okay, or that notion. Because what I understand is that the contributions of Black African Americans in this country attributes to the contributions of Africans all over the world, including the start of civilization. So no, I will never resent being Black nor African American. I told y'all in the first episode of this podcast, I bask in my Blackness. I love my people. And to be a African American, that's the best of both worlds to me. I love being part of the African diaspora. I love being Black. Like I said, it's dangerous, but it's lit. I love my melanin, and I love my melanated people. I love us. So I don't want us to be in an identity crisis and thinking that one negates the other. We are one. We are one. And that's what had me so heated. I know you guys heard about the Ryan Coogler situation in Atlanta, Georgia. Now they down there filming Black Panther 2. And anybody that know me know I was having heart palpitations behind Black Panther. So in this movie we just was all up and through this movie. How can you not know who Ryan Coogler was? How can you not know who he was? Anyway, if you haven't heard the story, the bank teller, he went to Bank of America to make a withdrawal. And keep in mind, the withdrawal was $12,000. All right, that's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, that's a lot of money. But he wrote it on a note. He wanted to be discreet and he wanted to withdraw $12,000 cash from his account. The note read, "From my account." He was at Bank of America. If you ever banked at Bank of America, you know You go inside the bank, you put in your debit card, you put in your PIN number, and you give your ID to the teller, to the teller, right? A lot of banks are not doing the withdrawal slips, but even if he had to do that, he had his identification, he had his debit card, he knew his PIN number, and he had enough money in the bank. Nevertheless, this sister, yes, it was a sister, called 911 on Ryan Coogler because she thought he was there to rob a bank. I've been on this earth for a long time, and I have never heard of a bank robber saying my account. Give me a specific amount of money out of my account, and I had my ID, my debit card, my PIN number. He even had the badge hanging from his hip from where he was working, saying he's the director of Black Panther 2. Not only did this sister call the police. When the police officers came, they put him in handcuffs. They detained him. They detained his driver. Anyway, we got to do better. And everybody that's involved need to be dealt with. Every last one of them. Now, Ryan is saying that he's moved on, and he probably has because it happened back in January. However, for us, we just not seeing the tape. We just not seeing it. And it angered us even more so because the teller, the bank teller, was an African-American woman. So now I question, have we dealt with the white supremacy inside us? You see, I watched a masterclass and my brother Carnell West had a episode on there that talked about the white supremacy inside us. Do we racial profile our own people based on how they look? Based on the way they talk, their mannerisms? You see, that should be a wake-up call for all of us, because we're jumping to conclusions now. This man had every piece of evidence to prove who he was, and he was still detained. The man was, but what I loved was how cool, calm, and collected he was. Yes, he was a little agitated, but he complied immediately when they came into the bank. He told one of the officers, Ryan Coogler, Google me. Cause I'm like, you don't know who I am. Now, of course, she apologized, but to me, that's not good enough. Cause we have to address that. And he's moving on. He's moving on. Bank of America apologized. He's moving on. Had it been me, I would have been gone and my money would have been gone too. My millions. Because we do understand that Ryan Coogler is a Black Hollywood producer, movie producer. And he ain't producing no junk. He producing stuff that we want to see. He producing box office smash. Come on now. Black Panther. Wakanda forever. Come on now. Ryan Coogler. She knew better than that. They all did. And all of them need to have some type of reprimand behind it. You stop doing that. And let me say this. Let me say this before some people start talking about, oh, well, why are you saying that? Because no, we need to start because he's rich. No, we need to start treating everyone with dignity. Everyone, give them the benefit of the doubt. This man probably wanted to be discreet simply because we got some fools running around here, criminals that are watching people go to the banks, get their money out, following them home and robbing them. And another thing, I don't care how much money he wanted to get out. It's his money. He can do that. Stop counting people coins for them. Then it comes out that the man was trying to pay his nanny. It just was a mess. Things that shouldn't have taken place took place. But he has moved on, and we have to deal with each other better. And what I'm saying is, just because he's a rich guy, if it's the average guy, we still got to deal with them with respect. Period, point blank. At least for our own. At least for our own. Give our own the benefit of the doubt. Period. And as I said about the sister before, I don't know what the protocol is for Bank of America as far as calling 911 to say, hey, I think somebody robbing us. Did she check his account? Did she, because see, when I opened up a bank account, they needed my ID and all that. Did she even look at his signature on his driver's license to see if it matched the handwriting? I mean, it just was some things that the sister could have done prior to making that mistake. That's probably gonna cost her job. But in other news, Houston Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson, number 4. The grand jury decided not to indict 22 women, massage therapists, masseuses, said he was inappropriate with them. And that's what he probably was, inappropriate. But was it criminal? Absolutely not. So I will say this, because y'all know how I feel about the NFL. The smear campaign against Deshaun Watson wanting a trade did not work. On another note, I can walk and chew gum. Deshaun Watson shouldn't have been doing some of them little freaky things he was trying to do. Period. My daddy always say, everybody got a little freak in them. So he had some little stuff going on with him that he shouldn't have been doing. Nevertheless, a no bill, 9 of them came down. 9 of them came down in his favor. And for that, we're going to celebrate that win. We're going to celebrate it. Okay? Now we're going to see who going to trade him, where he going or what have you. Because if it would have came down where he was indicted, it would have been a problem. I can tell you this. I was a Houston Texans supporter. I was a fan. I have now moved on to a different team in Texas. Yes, in Texas. Because I got to represent Texas. And I don't care for Jerry Jones at all, because I always say the NFL is a plantation and he run his well. But he do right by his players. Now, I got to give him that. So, and I'm talking about those Cowboys. Yes. So I done moved on. But the Houston Texans can kiss Deshaun Watson goodbye. Now we got his jersey in there with the number 4 on there. We're going to, always have it. But the thing is, when J.J. Watt left, I was upset. My other guy, Hopkins, left, D-Hop, I was mad. Then this mess. Needless to say, I'm happy about it. I'm ecstatic. I can't even contain myself, because this a good day. And I keep telling y'all about this shift. The shift is happening slowly but surely. But a shift is happening. But back to my original topic. My original topic is about being black in America. And this week we survived being black. So when it comes down to whether I identify as black or African American, I am a black African American. That's how I identify. However, I do respect Smokey's point of view and the point of view and perspectives of many of our elders. At the end of the day, we are one. Each one teach one. So let me know how you feel in the comments. And with that being said, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Also, click the tiny bell to be notified when new episodes drop. The visual podcast is on YouTube, and now the audio podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and other podcast streaming platforms. So thank you for joining me. It is always a pleasure. This is your realest home girl, Valarie Winn, and I will talk to you guys on the next episode. Peace.